Again, thank you so much, Joyce, and everybody at Motel. And I had said, I'm just letting people know Motel is my favorite name of a regional storytelling organization anywhere in the history of time, including the logo. I mean, it all matches up beautifully. A lot of y'all know my Aunt Marguerite is 85 years old and only recently graduated from medical school. And the way she explains it is like this. And I know a lot of you already know this, but I'm going to repeat it for those who don't know that my girlfriend Mary Frances and our husbands had passed on, so we went back to medical school. We served two purposes in our community. We're a hospice for people who won't admit it, and with the emergency room for the ashamed, usually very conservative people, because the first time they ever heard the word hospice was from Bill Moyers in the PBS. And so they think death and dying is a liberal issue. So if y'all are in coming to Georgia, come and see us. We'll treat you. Marguerite was very excited. She had gone to buy gas, and this is so, she was a little embarrassed. She had never paid for her own gas at the gas pump. But Gene Cannon retired from his Pure Oil station, and she just had always gone there, and she always gassed up whenever she could. And so she went to the Quick Trip, 20 gas pumps. It was overwhelming, and I taught her that she could just stick the thing in the pump. Now she's pumped her own gas, but she hadn't paid for it at the pump. And she was there that time. She stuck her card in, she pulled it out. Remove quickly, try again. And she tried again. Remove quickly, try again. And she tried again. You are old, go inside. And she went into the gas station. And when she went into the gas station, you know, she paid with cash money. Y'all remember cash money? She's now counting pennies, of course. And she came out and she saw four sticks of firewood shrink wrapped together for $7. It's the dumbest thing she ever saw in her life. And it occurred to her that every single day she sees the dumbest thing she's ever seen in her life. And she thought about what my Uncle Charles would say. My Uncle Charles is the kind of guy who said, "Hey man, it's such a fool, you could sell him a bottle of water for $1." He used to say, "Hey man, it's such a fool, you could sell him a bale of pine straw in Georgia." But now she sees that firewood and she was thinking about what he would say. And she hears him from beyond. And when he speaks to her from beyond, it's often Shakespearean and it's often inappropriate. And she came back to her car and she was thinking of what Uncle Charles would say. And right then, right before she opened the door, he said, "Darling, that's what you call one night stand wood." And Marguerite said out loud, "That was uncalled for." And the man who was pumping gas across from her was having some evil thoughts, and he wondered how she knew. When she got in her car, she was so excited for having gotten a tank full of gas. She always feels satisfying when she has a tank full of gas. She's got to go on an errand. She's got to go to the Belks. Now, if you're in the deep South, you know that Belks is where old people buy their clothes. That joke kills in Alabama. Anyway, and so she gets in her car and she's going to go to the Belks. She's got to get some new clothes because she's going to be Woman of the Year at the Hospital Auxiliary Gala. And the last formal dress she has is her Mother of the Bride dress with sheer sleeves, and she doesn't want that. And then her funeral dress, and that's another story when she was a widow. And she comes to a four-way stop, and she loves the four-way stops because it's the law to be courteous. And she's just gotten her brand new license, and she knows this is her very last brand new license. So rock back, that's what the little book said. I read that little book on how to drive before I went to get my new license. And they checked my eyes and everything. And you are here first. You have a lovely day. Or I believe you were next. You go right ahead. And you and I both turning left, do side do. And she's making her way into the intersection. And she takes that precautionary look to the right. And there's this giant mid-90s Lincoln Navigator, black windows, black bumpers. It's this big black car, except it had these shining wheels that kept going around, that kept going around. They were lit up and they were going. So the car was going fast, so she slammed on her brake because it looked like the car was going really fast because of those wheels. And when she slammed on her brake, she was rear-ended by the dude who was trying to come in on her turn. So she cranked down her window when the cop came and the young man came. Well, the young man came first. She cranked down the window and he asked her if she was all right. She said, well, what, that car? And she looks again. Well, when she got rear-ended, her glasses flew off and she was looking for the clutch that ain't been there since 1967 because her car is a 1968 Plymouth Fury 2. It's the last car my Uncle Charles gave her before he died because he hasn't given her any cars since. And she was, what's going on with that car? And the young man who hit her explains that it was spinners. And then the cop came, who was 12 years old, and everything was talked about. And she called me, and luckily I wasn't on the road, so I came and I picked her up, and I said, "All right, we got everything settled with the police. We got the car being towed to the Chrysler place because yes, she still has all the insurance on that car. She still has, what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? Comprehensive insurance on that 1968 Plymouth. So it's going to the Chrysler place. I said, we need to take you to a doctor and have you checked out. She said, no, I don't need to go to a doctor. I said, of course you need to go to a doctor. I don't want to go to a doctor. I said, well, let me carry you somewhere. Well, I need to go to the Belks. Well, let me carry you to the Belks. No, I don't want you to carry me to the Belks either. But it's I need to go to the grocery store and it's sticker day. Well, she knows that I love sticker day. And this is what sticker day is. When she married my Uncle Charles, it's a long story, but he always peeled a banana from the bottom instead of the stem because human beings are the only primates who don't know how to peel a banana. We always break it off at the stem and it makes a smushy thing. But if you pinch very gently at the bottom and peel, it comes down. So she's a doctor, right? Just say right in the privacy of your own home. Right. And she has IV bags and stuff, right? Right. Right. Well, so there's a little sticker that goes in the IV bag and it has the doctor's name, the dose, the rate, the fluid, whatever it is, and there's a little tab there. It says peel here, so you can break it apart. So when she gets a nice stack of those little tabs that are still on the little slicky part where the sticker used to be, we go to the grocery store and for every bunch of bananas, we stick the peel here sign on the best part. It's a practical joke. And then we watch for a while, knowing that we're changing the world one bunch of bananas at a time. So I carried her to the store, and then she said, carry me home. And if you're not from the Deep South, I meant to tell you, to carry somebody somewhere is to transport them in a motor vehicle. All right, it's not, she ain't heavy, she's my Aunt Marguerite. So it's not that. So I carried her home, and when we got home, she called Arnold's taxi cab. Now, it's a small town taxi cab. If you go to a big city and you're going to land at the airport and you're like, land at LaGuardia and you need to get to Midtown, New York, and you get a cab, that's a sign of affluence. But a small town taxi cab either means you're too old to drive, you can't afford a car, or you have a DUI. So she called Arnold's small town taxi cab. It's a 1994 Ford Aerostar. And he showed up in front of her house, and she got in Arnold's taxi cab. And while she's in Arnold's taxi cab, she's riding along thinking, this is a sign from God. Someday, this is what life will be like. Someday, she won't be driving anymore, but she wants to stay in her home as long as she can. And so she'll call Arnold's taxi cab 2 or 3 times a week to run those errands that she needs to run. Sometimes she has a patient who comes in with a pain in their hip and they think maybe they need hip replacement surgery, but they're just too old for such a thing. And Margaret will say, honey, that's a sign from God. And here's some analgesics. Sometimes things are just that way. They're just a sign from God. And she's thinking about that as she's riding and she's waving at everything that goes by because she can't see. She broke her glasses, but she'd rather be thought of as an idiot rather than a snob. Telephone poles, trees. And she went to Belk's. She got a new dress. Ginger at the Belk's knows the kind of thing she needs. I don't need anything that buttons in the back or zips up in the back because a widow doesn't need anything that zips in the back. Everybody understands that. She got her new dress. Arnold had left the meter running and she's heading back home. And then she's spotted by Sally Lynette. Sally Lynette's the person. Is that Marguerite Van Camp in that awful taxi van? I've never seen such a thing. Sally Lynette sometimes stalks people for their own good. And Sally Lynette began to follow that van. Sally Lynette's car is a light pink Cadillac. She used to be in cosmetics. They're driving along, and Marguerite gets out in front of her house from Arnold's taxi cab, and Arnold drives off, and here comes Sally Lynette. Sally Lynette's car is so nice that she can roll down the passenger window from the driver's seat. I know, I know. So, Marguerite, sugar, you all right? I saw you in that taxi van. I'm concerned, darling. You all right? Oh, I'm fine. I was in a little fender bender, and my glasses are being fixed, and I can't drive. My car's at the Chrysler place. Well, you're not going to take that taxi van to the hospital auxiliary gala, are you? Well, I was planning to, yes. Honey, let me take you in my nice car. Let me take you. You don't need to be going there in that taxi van. I've never seen such a thing. Marguerite said, all right, well, I reckon they'll be fine. Marguerite knew she was trapped. Well, look, it starts at 7, but I'm going to pick you up at 6:15 because we need to get there early because it's all the way on over yonder in Conyers, and everybody wants to come in and love on you because they love you. All right, 6:15. I reckon that'll be fine. All right, sugar, bye-bye. Marguerite goes in her house, and she's thinking, 6:15. If I tinkle at 6:12, I reckon that'll be fine. Because, after a certain age, it's all about bladder management. Well, that Saturday arrived, and at 10 minutes after 6, people pay attention. She was kind of saving it up, because she knew she was going to be in a car for a while. At 10 after 6, Sally Lynette, ding dong, rang the doorbell, and Marguerite went through the door, and she didn't want to be any bother to anybody. And, are you ready to go, Shongo? I reckon. Let me get my wrap in my purse. It was chilly. This burst of cold air came through, and Marguerite put her shawl on, and she sat in Sally Lynette's car and sank down a little more, sank down a little more. On that chilly night, she's riding along in that car with Sally Lynette. Sally Lynette was so excited to do this favor for Marguerite. Sally Lynette owes Marguerite a favor because Marguerite treated her at her little hospital. Now Marguerite and Mary Frances's hospital is an antebellum home that they got cheap because it needed a lot of work, and it has 2 magnolia trees on the side, so they only have to paint the front. And Sally Lynette was driving one day. She's a realtor now in her light pink Cadillac. She's eating a Subway sandwich, and she's driving with her knee at the same time. And a kitty cat ran in front of her car, and she was talking on her cell phone. She's driving with her knee, eating that sandwich. And when that kitty cat ran in front of her, phew, the sandwich went on the floor, and the cell phone was old Clippy Nokia style flame. It got caught in her hair. Her hair is clear, all black velvet, kind of this. Nobody knows what her real hair color would be because her first gray hair that appeared when she was 28, she started dyeing her hair clear, all black velvet. But her ringtone was the hustle. So she went to Marguerite's hospital. They got the air hose bell from Mr. Callahan's store, ding ding, and everybody rushed out. Mary Frances and Marguerite rushed out, and they helped Sally Lynette in, and Mary Frances pulled out her bandage scissors, just said, there you go. Well, she was due. Sally Lynette was due for a dye job, so she looked like, an exploded Pepe Le Pew. Well, now they got to, dye the hair, and, Mary Frances has never cut hair before. She's having fun. Click, 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 click. Marguerite's gone down to the drugstore to get some Clairol black velvet. She comes back, they dye it, they fit it, and now it needs some product, It just, well, they do colonoscopies. They open the drawer, they pull out that tube. It's the abbreviation for Kentucky. And if you get it, you shouldn't be offended. And they, it made like a spiky kind of thing going. They took her into the mirror of the bathroom. She was, you look 10 years younger. And they charged her Blue Cross Blue Shield Advantage plan plenty for that medical procedure. Well, anyway, that time had arrived, and Sally Lynette picked up Marguerite at 10 after 6, not 6:12, not 6:15. and they're driving along, and they're driving along, and and as they're driving, Sally Lynette begins the interrogation, and Marguerite was ready for the interrogation. Are you going to be able to drive again, sugar? Yes, I am. I told you, my car is at the Chrysler place, and my ophthalmologist, Dr. Wu's optician, Enrique, is working on my glasses. Dr. Wu, you go to that Dr. Wu? I most certainly do. He's been my ophthalmologist for 10 years. Well, he said I needed progressive lenses, and I said I'm a Republican. They're driving along and driving along, and after a while, Marguerite feels it. That warmth down there. She felt that warmth when she was 16 years old. She was in the truck with her boyfriend, my Uncle Charles. It was their second date. Her mama would not let her go on a date with a boy in a car unless another couple was going, and there was. In the bed of the truck were Mary Frances and Wiley, and they were trying not to pay attention to them. And they're driving along, and Marguerite's got to go. 16 years old, on the way to a basketball game. And Marguerite had a younger voice. Charles, I need a service station, darling. My Uncle Charles said, "Baby, you don't need a service station. I got a tank full of gas. We're good. Don't you worry about it. I told your mom I'd take care of you." Drive, 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 drive. Marguerite said, "Charles, we need to stop at a filling station." "Baby, we don't need a filling station. Everything's fine. We don't need to stop." And Marguerite didn't say anything for a long time because this is back in the days of decorum, before guys like me would have work. And they're driving along. If y'all going to laugh, laugh loud. Now, I know you. I got people here. Y'all trying to stifle your laugh? No, that's not acceptable. Anyway, focus. You're like the laugh track. It's like, bad sitcom. Okay. I'll talk about David and Pat in a minute. Anyway, focus. So driving along. Then Marguerite said, "Charles, I need," and it happened. That which you don't want to think about. That's the bad news. Here's the good news. For the rest of their long, sweet time together, their long, lovely marriage, whenever Marguerite said, "Charles, I need," she got what she needed. But now they're driving along, and Marguerite feels that warmth, and she turns to Sally Lynette and said, "Sally Lynette, I am so sorry. I've had a moment of incontinence." Oh. Sally Lynette, that's a big word. What was that, sugar? I've had a little accident. We're all entitled to a mistake, darling, even you. Yes, but I TT'd on your nice seat. Oh, we gotta pull over! We gotta pull over! You'll be electrocuted! Electrocuted? These seats are heated! Checked it, She discovered that it wasn't wet and it wasn't turning cold. And she realized it might be a sign from God. And she said out loud to God, "Lord, that was uncalled for." Well, my Aunt Marguerite and my Uncle Charles, let me start over. It's been a long weekend, but it's good. I'm happy to be here. My Aunt Marguerite loves liberty enlightening the world. And liberty enlightening the world is the proper name given to what we call the Statue of Liberty. And the reason she loves liberty enlightening the world is she loved her great uncle Leopold Mendelssohn. And Leopold Mendelssohn, his first memory is being in steerage of the ship coming from Germany. He was so scared. His mama was scared and sick. And when she wasn't holding him so tight it hurt, she was throwing up. It was an arduous journey. But then one day, his mother took his hand, his father too, and they all went to the deck. And they saw her in the harbor, liberty enlightening the world. And all the grown-ups were cheering and laughing and crying all at the same time. It was the most astounding thing he had ever seen in his life. It remained the most astounding thing he ever saw his entire life. Well, great Uncle Leopold Mendelssohn grew up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. He He worked, he worked, he worked, he worked, he worked, he worked until he gave half of what he earned to his family. He kept half of what he earned until he could buy a Model T truck. And he got in that truck. He tricked it out to peddle. He tricked it out to buy materials for farmers and farmers' wives. He got in with a wholesaler. I mean, he made his way down. You know, that's the story of the immigrant. There's this job they have. That's why there were Chinese laundries. That's why in New York, the Irish became the three Ps: policemen, politicians, priests. That's why Indian folks run motels and convenience stores, because one group will tell another group how to do it, and it gets passed on and it gets passed on. And being a Jewish peddler with dreams of owning their own retail business in the Deep South was a thing in the early 20th century. He made his way down the eastern seaboard. He stayed in auto camps, which predate motels, motor hotels, until he came to my little town. He ran the square 3 times. He saw there was a jewelry store for sale. A jewelry store. Ha! His grandfather was a watchmaker. Later, he told me, how hard can it be? And he saw the sign on the jewelry store, and he parked his truck in front of it and shaded his eyes on the glass and saw the number and went to the phone, put in a nickel, and called Mr. Fetter. Mr. Fetter said, Fetter Realty. I'm looking at this jewelry store here. Mr. Fetter had never spoken with anybody who talked like that on the phone. All right. Can we look at it right away? Sure. It didn't take any time. Mr. Fetter just had to cross the square. And they went inside, and my great uncle Leopold Mendelssohn looked at this old dingy store, but behind the counter were all the tools you would need to repair rings and watches and all the whatnot of jewelry. There were even a pair of those glasses with the swing away little magnifying glasses. And my great uncle Leopold said, how much? Mr. Fetter said, now hold on, we need to talk about your credit and your character. My credit's perfect. My character's better. And he went to his truck, and they agreed on a price. He went to his truck, and he pulled out 3 money bags, and he paid cash for the store. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but Marguerite, when she was a little girl, loved this guy. She rode her bike to school, and every day when she came home from school, she would come into his house and go, woohoo, in the tradition of my people. And she would go in, and he'd go, Marguerite, little one, come free the imprisoned lightning. And there, next to his leather wingback chair on the smoking stand in his heart pine den, he had a Liberty Enlightening the World cigar lighter. Liberty Enlightening the World is the proper name of the Statue of Liberty. Did I say that yet? If I haven't, I repeated myself. Good. Well, I'm doing a good job. I want to make sure that information's gotten to you. And the way you light that lighter is you pull down the tablet, the torch is up here, you choom choom, and the little flame comes up. And she did that, choom choom, and he said, you did it! You freed the imprisoned lightning! Yay! And they would clap and cheer. And then he would say, do you want some ice cream? And my Aunt Marguerite said, of course. And they go into the kitchen every day, every school day. And he had these 2 crystal bowls. There are only 2 of these bowls left in the world. There used to be a great big set. And he puts the vanilla ice cream in. And then he pulls out the Hershey's chocolate syrup in the can with the church key. And he would pour it on and stop. And she'd say, more. And he'd pour it on and stop. More. And he'd put a whole lot on it. And he says, why do you want so much? Every time. Every time. And she would say, it makes it more better. And he would laugh. And then they would go back into the den, and she'd sit on the ottoman fan across from his chair. And they would touch very gently those bowls together. And my great uncle Leo would say, L'chaim. Marguerite would say, L'chaim. And then they would eat their ice cream, and she would tell him about her day and everything going on. Across from his chair on the wall was an idyllic painting, a beautiful thing. It was a dog in a farmyard with chickens. She loved that picture. It was old thing. Farmyard, chickens, a couple of buildings in the back. She would stare at it sometimes, and sometimes they'd be quiet. It had little white cracks all through it. And my great-great-uncle Leo said, "What do you suppose that dog's name is?" And Marguerite thought of a name. Well, it was a word she learned in Sunday school from her good Sunday school teacher, Miss Charlotte. She said, "Steadfast. I think that dog's name is Steadfast." And my great-great-uncle Leo said, "You're right. Steadfast. Steadfast is the name of the dog. You're so smart. In fact, the painting is called Steadfast Guarding Her Chickens. Yay!" And she knew he was kidding her, but he was not teasing her. And kids know the difference. All those little white cracks, she mentioned them once. She goes, "I don't like those cracks. Why are they there?" "All those cracks, Will. It took me a long time to get that painting. My mother wanted it. What is it? Your great aunt? I can't figure it out. Anyway, she wanted it, and I had to work really hard to get it. And then it had to spend some time in Norway, and then it spent some time in Sweden. It's not good for a painting to be on a ship with all that salt and humid air. Got the cracks." Oh. Fifth grade. When Marguerite was in fifth grade, she came bounding into his house. "Woohoo! Come, Marguerite, come free the imprisoned lightning." Guess what? Guess what? Marguerite's good history teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had said, "Boys and girls, I want you to think of a symbol of America that you want to do a project on. Think of 3 of them. Not everybody gets to do the same one. So think of 3. Everybody will have a different project." But Marguerite only chose one. And she wrote, "I want to do, I would like to do a project on freedom enlightening the world because my great uncle Leopold Mendelssohn," she loved this word, "beheld her in the New York harbor when he immigrated to the United States. Period." And Mrs. Patterson put her hand over her heart. Good patriotic Mrs. Patterson. So of course Marguerite won liberty to do a project for her. So when she told my great Uncle Leo. By the way, I had to call him great great Uncle Leo, and I need to tell you this before I forget. He was born a week before Irving Berlin was born, and he died 2 weeks after Irving Berlin died. He lived to be 101. I called him great great Uncle Leo. One day I said, "Why do I have to call you great great Uncle Leo?" He said, "Andy, I'm that great." So she said, "I can have a grown-up help me with my Liberty project. Will you help me?" "Of course." "Can we make a paper mache Liberty?" "Of course." "Can we put a candle?" "No, no, no, not a candle. It's imprisoned lightning." And he helped her with the project. He taught her so much about liberty. She knew more about liberty than any of the people in the whole school, grown-ups included. She learned so much. And they made a paper mache Liberty. And that paper mache Liberty, everyone listening at home, it was worthy of being photographed by the Brownie camera. And I've seen that picture, and it's astounding. It's hideous. Such a wonderful thing. When he bought the store, he went to Atlanta to learn how to run a jewelry store. He didn't open it for 6 months. And then he came back, he opened it up, and everybody's like, "Who's that guy that's opened up Jones Jewelry?" He found out later that the Joneses were a founding family of our town. And not everybody went in there. "I think he's Jewish. I know he's a Yankee." You know how they talk. But he had a trick. It was a smart trick. He put Adam's Practical Joke Stuff in the window. Now, we're talking real stuff. You know what that is, don't you? Yes, of course. We're talking joy buzzers made of metal like God meant for them to be. Real glass dribble glasses, whoopee cushions, of course, and my favorite, the disappearing ink. Now, Mrs. Davis, my 3rd grade teacher, when we were learning to write with ink, when we had graduated from fat pencils, she did not believe in ballpoint pens, although they existed. So we all had to have those cheap 75-cent Schaefer fountain pens with the washable blue ink. And one of our school supplies that we were required to bring were vials, like medicine bottles full of bleach, Q-tips so we could correct our mistakes. But the disappearing ink was great. great Uncle Leo showed it to me. Now you take the disappearing ink, you take the cartridges when it's empty, and you suck it up into that cartridge, and you put it there, and you write a note for your friend. Make sure they watch you write it, and then you hand it to them, and when they read it, it's gone. But I had a better idea because Marcy Robertson was in my class, and she was a perfect human being. I mean, she had 12 years perfect attendance. That's messed up, y'all. Perfect person. She's still a perfect adult, a perfect person. But one day I was talking with her, had my pen, and I went, and you know, when you have those pens, and the ink went across her blouse, and she ran out into the hall to the restroom to wash it out without permission. And she got into the restroom, and in the mirror, it was gone. And she got in trouble. And then the next time I saw my great Uncle Leo, I walked in the store. He was, Andy, did you use the disappearing ink? I said, yes, sir. He said, what happened? And I told him everything I just told you. He said, Andy, I'm so proud of you. Well, you know, the Rotary Club in town said, hey, look, y'all, he's German. We're Rotary International. We ought to ask him. So they did. They asked him to be in the Rotary Club. And then his eldest daughter wanted to be Jewish, so he would take her to synagogue on Saturdays in Atlanta. So it was a bit of a trek. But the younger daughter wanted to be Methodist, so she could go to the Methodist youth group. It was walking distance from their house. And so he would go to the First Methodist Church every Sunday that she was singing or doing something with the youth choir or something like that. He sat with our family on the seventh pew from the front. It's a raked, sloped congregation area. The that church was built in 1854. The floors are pine, soft pine, so you can look down and see the heel marks of my foremothers. And whenever anybody rose for the Apostles' Creed, he rose. And he would sit. And he would rise when they sang. He never opened his mouth, but he always smiled. Everybody came to love my great Uncle Leopold Mendelssohn. My Aunt Marguerite maintained a relationship with that old generation, that the preceding generation. My great Uncle Leo's mother. I mean, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, y'all. My great Uncle Leo's daughter and granddaughter and great granddaughter. And my great Uncle Leo's great granddaughter's name is Rose. And Rose is you know, there are people in your family that you just clickety clack with, as a dear one of mine says. And Rose and Marguerite clickety clack. And Rose would write to Marguerite and say, I'm going to go to the cemetery and visit the graves. So Marguerite's house borders the cemetery. So they would go to lunch, or Marguerite would fix lunch, and they'd go through the walk-through gate. And Marguerite had always made sure she had a stone from somewhere on her travels, a rock that she admired. And there's a little definition for you, y'all. If it's on the ground, it's a rock. If you stop and regard it and pick it up and put it to some sort of use, that's when it becomes a stone. Marguerite, don't look that up, by the way. Marguerite would always have a stone, a few stones for the cemeteries. Marguerite would walk with Rose in the cemetery and introduce Rose to new people that are there. And they would come to great Aunt Lily's grave, great Uncle Leopold's grave. She loved Rose. And Rose lived in Atlanta. She lived in an area called Virginia Highlands. One day in the autumn, Rose sent Marguerite, she sent Marguerite an email. I would love for you to come to Benjamin's bar mitzvah. That was Rose's son. He was turning 13. It was time for his bar mitzvah. Marguerite wrote, I would love to come. Rose said, shall I send you an Uber? No, of course not. You don't need to send me an Uber. I know how to drive to Atlanta now. So that day arrived, and Marguerite got her 1968 Plymouth Fury 2, which was all repaired now, because Marshall at the Chrysler place went to eBay and found a bumper in the trunk. Marguerite got on I-20, drove to Atlanta, hung a right on Moreland, hung a left on Ponce de Leon. And when she was on Ponce, in Atlanta we call it Ponce, and you might call it Ponce de Leon, but you would be wrong. She would put her hand over her heart when they passed the Majestic Diner, because when I was young,
Charles and I would go to a picture show at the Fox Theater, or we'd sometimes go to a play, and then he always wanted to go eat afterwards, late at night, sometimes 11:30 or midnight, and the Majestic Diner was open. And we'd go in there. They didn't say I don't even know if they had a key to the place. We loved going there.
And she loved going there with her husband. So she puts her hand on the heart. She makes that right turn onto Virginia. And she comes to Rose's house this particular time. The people were gathering. She was ready to greet Benjamin. She had a present for him. And she rang the doorbell, and there he was. She called him Benny. She said, "Hello, Benny." I mean, he opened the door, and he would always say, "Hi, great, 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 great cousin Marguerite."
"Hello, great, 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 great cousin Benny."
"I'm no longer Benny. I'm Ben or Benjamin. I am a man now."
"Duly noted. And I have a present for you since you're a man. Now listen to me. This is a real pocket knife."
And she handed him a case pocket knife, BK, engraved on the hilt, Benjamin Katz.
Now, the most important thing about a young man owning a real knife is you want to make sure it's not in your carry-on luggage or in your pocket at the airport. They'll take it from you.
Benjamin said, "Duly noted. Come on in." And Marguerite went in, and it was such a celebration. And they carpooled to the synagogue, and the men, the Gentile men were issued white yarmulkes with Benjamin's name on the inside, like a Methodist wedding napkin. It was so lovely. It was a wonderful ceremony. And then when that was over, Marguerite went in, and everybody said bye bye, and Marguerite was making her way to Rose to say goodbye to Rose. And Rose said, "Hey, do me a favor. Would you tarry here for a minute? Can you go in the den? I want to get rid of everybody. I just want some time with just you." Marguerite said, "Of course." So Marguerite went into the den, and Rose closed the door behind Marguerite. And Marguerite went in there, and above the fireplace, in a place of family honor, was that picture of the dog nursing the pups that she loved so well from great great Uncle Leopold's house. She was standing there admiring it, so happy that it was here, that it was still in the family at this place of honor. And she was looking at it, and Rose came in bearing a plant, but Marguerite didn't see Rose at first. And Rose touched her on the shoulder, and it startled Marguerite. She gave a little start.
"Oh, excuse me, Rose, you startled me, sugar. I was looking up here at Steadfast guarding her chickens."
Rose said, "Huh, you know the name of this picture?" Marguerite said,
"Oh, I suppose I do."
Rose said, "Huh, great grandpapa said one of his favorite little girls named this painting."
"Did he now?"
And then Rose said, "This is the season of Sukkot. It's a time of flowering and fruiting, and it's a tradition, a Jewish tradition to give a fruiting plant to somebody you love, we love. And this is a little orange plant. I don't know if the oranges are edible or even good to eat, rather, but the flowers are beautiful and it's really fragrant, and I want you to have this." And Rose gave Marguerite that plant. And Marguerite said,
"Rose, I am so moved. Thank you, Rose. Thank you."
well, Marguerite went home. December came. And when December came, Marguerite got another email from Rose. "I would love for you to come to a small dinner gathering."
"I would love to come."
"Shall I send you an Uber?"
"No, of course not. I've already told you about that. And yes, I do type with an accent."
So Marguerite got in her 1968 Plymouth Fury. She went into Atlanta. She hung a right on Moreland. She hung a left on Ponce. She put her hand over her heart as she turned in front of the Majestic, and she got on Virginia Avenue, and she got to Rose's house, but nobody else was there. And she couldn't figure out where everybody was. It, it was astounding to her. And she didn't, was this the right day? Is she late? Is she early? She didn't know, but she had her own plant that she had brought from her faith tradition. She put it on the passenger seat in the seat belt like you do. And she carried that plant to Rose's door. She rang the doorbell. She thought maybe Benjamin would answer, but no, it was Rose. And she was in her apron. And Rose said, "Hey, hey, come on in.
Where's everybody? I thought it was a dinner gathering."
Well, yeah, it's just us. It's a small dinner gathering. Marguerite was delighted to see that, and Rose saw the plant.
"That's beautiful. Don't say the name of this plant. You'll be wrong."
Rose said, "Okay."
"This is a flor de noche buena. That is Spanish for the flower of the good night. The good night is what people in Mexico call Christmas Eve. The good night. And there was once a man from South Carolina who was the ambassador to Mexico, and his name was Poinsett. And he saw these pretty bushes with the red leafy petals, and he thought highly of himself. So he brought it to the United States, named after himself. That conceited cuss. This is the Flor de Noche Buena, flower of the good night. And the story about it is there was once a little girl named Pepita in Mexico, and she was on her way to the Noche Buena, the good night. And she was poor, and she was supposed to bring an offering for the Christ child, but she didn't have anything. And she was, wah, I don't have anything for the Christ child. I'm too poor, wah. And an angel of the Lord appeared before her. Now, we don't know what angel it was. It could have been lo. It could have been behold. But there she was. That angel was. He said, "What's wrong, sugar?" I'm paraphrasing. "What's wrong, sugar?" "I don't have a gift for the Christ child." La, 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 la. "Oh, you hush now. Go pull up some weeds over yonder on the side of the road." "What? Pull up some weeds?" "Why? Just do what I tell you. I'm an angel now." So she did. And he said, "Now you put those, she's pulling the weeds. He said, "Now while you take those weeds, you put them on the altar of the church." "What?" People were laughing. "Do as I say." So she gathered some of those weeds and she turned around and he was gone. And she went into the church and she put those weeds on the altar there. And, and at the end of the service, pop, 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 those beautiful red petals appeared.
Well, that's what Marguerite was telling Rose. And Rose said, "I love that. Come on in, come on." And Marguerite and Rose went in the house. Now,
y'all know how young people, they buy old houses. This house was built in the 1920s, Rose's house. Young people don't like rooms. Did y'all know that? They take down all the walls. In the kitchen's in the back of this big old room right there in the living room. How does a wife to a husband say, "I need to talk to you in the kitchen right now"? They can't do it, can they, sugar? No, they can't. Well, Rose's and her countertops are granite. Have y'all ever seen granite countertops? It's ridiculous. Granite's good for two things: gravestones and gravel.
Rose took that Flor de Noche Buena, she put it on that deep granite sill over this big picture window overlooking her backyard. In the middle was a dogwood tree, and on the edges were azaleas, lots of them. And Marguerite was sitting there on the stool. The stool was comfortable, but she put her arms on the granite countertop, and Rose,
because people want you, they invite you to their house, and then they want you to watch them cook.
and she put her arms on the countertops, and she discovered that the the granite was sucking the body heat out of her, because that's what happens when you put your arms on the countertops. And she had one of those chills, the kind of chill that we used to call a rabbit running over your grave. She went blah, blah, blah. And when she went blah, 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 she thought she saw two petals go through the window and light on the dogwood tree outside. And she went, and when she went, Rose turned and looked to see what she was going at. And there it was, a cardinal on the tree. And Rose said, "You okay?"
And Marguerite said, "I'm such an old fool. I thought I saw that cardinal go through the window and light on that tree."
Rose looked for a second. She goes, "How do you know that's not what happened?" And then Rose said, "I have a present for you." She's taking off her apron. She's wiping off her hands. "I have a present for you, something that I ruined." Marguerite said,
"Thank you very much."
And Rose left the room. She came back with this flat, wrapped package, brown paper, baling twine. She put it on the counter. She says, open that up. Marguerite drew the veiling twine away and the leaves away, and there it was, steadfast, guarding her chickens. And Marguerite said,
Rose, Rose, this is too much. Rose, what? Where are the cracks?
And Rose said, you know, I love to paint. And I, I thought, you know, I can fill in those cracks. I can match the glossiness and the color. And I did. And I did a pretty good job. And a friend of mine came over when I was halfway over. And they were like, what are you doing? I told them what I was doing. And she went and got her friend from the High Museum of Art in Atlanta. And she brought that friend over. And the friend said, look at that signature. It was unreadable. But that's a Maurice Daniel Oppenheim. This picture's worth 10 figures, maybe six. You've ruined it. And I've ruined it. I've ruined it, Cousin Marguerite, and I'm so sorry. I'm so, so sorry. Marguerite said,
Rose, you have done no such thing, Rose. This is the most wonderful present of this kind I've ever received. I'm so moved. Thank you, Rose. Thank you.
right then,
Woohoo!
here comes, here comes Benjamin. And he said, hey, great cousin Marguerite.
Hello, great cousin Ben.
He goes, there's that picture. Hey, Mom, where's that been? I was looking for it. I was wondering.
Well, your mother has fixed it and made it better by painting in the cracks, and now she's giving it to me. Is that all right with you?
He said, yeah, I guess so.
Good. I'll leave this to you in my will. Now,
And then Rose said, I have a consolation prize for you. And Rose reached under the counter and came out with an old Mr. Boston box. She put the box on the counter and she lifted it off, and there it was, the Liberty Enlightening the World cigar lighter. And Marguerite said,
oh my word, it's great Uncle Leopold's lighter. I can't believe it. That's wonderful.
Benjamin said, what is that? And Rose said to her son, son, this is an old thing. We don't smoke. And this is, it's been in the attic. It's not exactly our taste. And Marguerite said,
and your mama's assuming that it's my taste. Benjamin, this is what you call an heirloom. Do you know what that is?
He said, I think so, but you're going to tell me.
That's right, I am. This belonged to your great-great-grandfather, and then it belonged to your great-grandmother, and then it belonged to your grandmother, and then it belonged to your grandmother gave it to your mother, who hid it away in shame. But it's an heirloom, and now I bestow it to you. But before you take her,
and she put her on the counter, Liberty,
I want you to hear what I have to say.
Well, Benjamin knew his great cousin Marguerite, and he knew to listen. He sat up on the stool and he listened to her.
This is Liberty Enlightening the World. That's her name. Do you know where we get her?
He said, France?
That's right. She was a gift from France. There was once a man named Edward de la Boulaye who lived in France, and he was an abolitionist. He believed in freeing enslaved people. And he was so excited when the United States freed enslaved people. He said, we need to give a great big present to the United States to show them how impressed we are and to show France what's what. So he had an idea. We ought to give him a great big colossal statue. That would be fun. And so he called up his friend Frederick Bartholdi, who was the sculptor. And Frederick Bartholdi called up his friend Gustave Eiffel. You ever heard of Gustave Eiffel?
Like Eiffel Tower?
That's right. He built Liberty's innards, even before he built that big old tower in France. So that's how we got her. Now, look, President Grant said, I know an island in the New York Harbor. People said, hey, President, can we have that island? And he said, oh, sure, y'all can have that island. And well, we had to build her pedestal. That's only fair. People in the United States, it was agreed, would build her pedestal. And people gave dollars and $5 and $10. And everybody who gave money, Mr. Pulitzer from the newspaper company, he put their name in the paper. This is before your name in public this is back when it was a big deal. So that's what he did. And that's what we did. Now, I want you to look at her feet. Look at her right foot. What's it doing?
And Benjamin said, it's lifting up.
That's right. She is moving forward. Now, when I was a little girl, your great-great-grandfather used to love to put Hershey's syrup on the ice cream, and I would say more, and I would say more, and then he would like to trap me into saying something grammatically ridiculous.
What was that?
He used to love to hear me say, it makes it more better. That's grammatically ridiculous, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Listen to me. More is a word of action. More. More better is not nearly as grammatically ridiculous as more perfect. And that's what Liberty's doing. She's moving forward to a more perfect union. Keep looking at her feet. What else do you see?
And that's when Benjamin said, they're chains. I never knew that. They're chains.
That's right. She is breaking out of chains and shackles. She's a symbol of all of us being more free after the emancipation of enslaved people. But you know what? There were people who recognized that since she was in the harbor, when people would be immigrating here, they would see her as a symbol of freedom too. And there was a young poet named Emma Lazarus who wrote a poem that's at Liberty Enlightening the World's base. And that poem reads, not like the brazen giant of Greek fame with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gate shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air bridge harbor that twin cities frame. Keep ancient lands your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Bring me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shores, send these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me. I lift my light beside the golden door. Benjamin, I hope you remember that. I hope that all Americans remember that. And I hope that we will all learn to listen to the better angels of our nature.